Welcome to Exclusive Homes University. Today we'll be talking about complaints, violations, and lawsuits. More specifically, FREC violations and local board violations. Many new agents have come into this industry and they don't really know what they're doing. This makes us take a lot of liability when negotiating and working on contracts since some of us don't have the required experience. We want you to understand that you are independent contractors and that we are all business owners. Today we'll be learning how to handle situations you may find yourself in so you do not get in trouble. First, you're going to want to read and understand the contracts. You can become better at this by going to the board trainings. Also, memorize pages. This is very important because it is the foundation of your business. Every one of you has an account with app files. Practice using these files as much as possible so you clearly understand every detail in each contract. You can use FARBAR or a neighbor contract. It's up to you. Know the difference between the two. I also encourage you to get involved with the local board. And remember, verbal contracts aren't illegal, but they are still unenforceable. You're going to find yourself in scenarios where you have a verbal agreement between a buyer and a seller, and all of a sudden you're going to have a contract that comes in writing and is substantially better than the verbal agreement you had prior. This seller is obviously going to say, I want the one with the better price and better conditions. However, this verbal agreement with the buyer is unenforceable. Furthermore, please read all of the contracts. If you need to practice, please download a new contract on app files and fill it up completely. And here's the deal. Send your broker the practice contract and they will read and critique it for you. It is preferable that you make a mistake in a play contract than in a real one. It is up to you to raise the standards when it comes to the contract because you do not want to get in trouble. Either you or the company getting in trouble is not ideal, and you do not want your buyer or your seller to get out of the contract because of a mistake. Raise your standards. If the property is in a trust, make sure that the person inquiring is actually able to sell the property and he has some type of ownership. Do not allow anyone to present one or two pages separately, and make sure you present and receive all pages every time you send or receive a contract or offer. You do not want any pages to be missing because that page can happen to be the one you are negotiating. Every time you send and receive a contract, it must be the complete contract. Do not allow them to piecemeal one page. Teach your buyers and inform them of the buying process before they register at an open house or new construction neighborhood, or if they are visiting new construction neighborhoods. You must upload all contracts into app files within 2 days. Be sure that all files and documents are uploaded into app files and presented to the broker/the office within 24 hours from execution. A $25 fine will be applied to any contracts uploaded after 5 days. An additional $200 fine will apply to any contracts turned in or uploaded into app files after closing. Send the MLS printout to the seller for approval and attach current Homeowners Association documents, budget, rules, and regulations, frequently asked questions, and applications for the new buyers to the MLS always. Never copy a previous MLS listing from another agent. And always recommend to do all inspections. If the property is wood frame, do not forget to always request a termite inspection. And if the property is older than 1978, do not forget to disclose the lead paint. It is better for us to recommend all inspections to cover our backs for future liabilities. If the buyer decided to not perform those inspections, make sure to upload your waiver form into app files. So remember, we have to see a copy of the inspection or the signed waiver form. Never, never, never allow the buyer to occupy the property before closing. We don't care if you represent the seller of the buyer, you're going to hear horror stories from clients with tears in their eyes how they are going to be homeless. They have no pillow to sleep on at night and they have no place to go, basically living on the beach. Never allow the buyer to occupy the property before closing. For example, the house was supposed to close on Friday, but that never happened. Saturday morning, a truck came with the moving things into it, and it pulled into the driveway, and they asked the seller to please let them move in. The buyer comes to move in and sees the AC doesn't work, but the closing never happened, and no papers have been signed. Monday morning, the buyers refuse to sign the papers until the AC is fixed. The realtor ends up losing $3,000 because he didn't want to get sued. Another example, the buyer came to the seller to let them into the house to rip off all the cabinets and renovate them. They spent a lot of money into it, and one day before closing, the buyer loses his job. Then the buyer wants to sue the seller for $20,000 because of the money he lost renovating the house. The best thing you can do is speak to an attorney and leave it in their hands. Do not get yourself in that situation. Go to neighbor.com and find lists of stipulations to be used. And do not create any addendum with your own words. If you need to create an addendum, call the hotline to get legal advice. Never act like an attorney. You can call 407-438-1409 from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday for any legal advice. Make sure all exclusions are on the sales contract. A lot of the times we list a property and the seller says, okay, I'm taking the washer and the dryer, and we put it in the MLS, but we always forget about it. 4 months after we receive a contract, and even though it's in the MLS, no one puts it in the contract, and guess what? The seller doesn't get to keep the washer and the dryer. So always watch to make sure that any exclusions you write in the listing agreement are now in the seller's contract. Or another example is the chandelier that Grandma gave the seller 40 years ago, he wants to keep. So we have to make sure to put those kinds of things in the seller's contract. Never fill out the seller's form. You've never lived there, so you cannot fill it out. Let the seller fill it out and let him or her sign it. Always give the seller's disclosure to the buyer. If you are the listing agent, make sure you put the seller's disclosure in the MLS. And make sure every time you get the contract, you get the buyer to sign the seller's disclosure. We don't understand how a buyer can offer a property without knowing any background on the property. If you are representing the buyer, always give the seller's disclosure to the buyer so they can look at it before they present an offer and they know what they're dealing with. So please, never fill out the seller's disclosure form. Never estimate taxes or closing costs. And never fill out the homeowners association application. You don't know how many people are going to be living there, or if they have or don't have dogs, and you don't want to be in trouble in the event that the homeowners association asks the people about something you wrote in the application, and the buyer will confess that you wrote it and not them. Last but not least, never comment on schools, walking distance, friendly neighborhoods, etc. Never make comments about race or religion or the quality of the schools or the walking distance to the beach, because maybe for you, walking distance is 2 blocks. Maybe for them, it's right in front of the beach. Don't make comments about friendly neighborhoods. Never sign anyone's name on anything. You met an investor from Canada and you have built a very strong relationship, and now you feel like they're a family to you. They say, I want to put an offer in a property, and he says, go ahead and offer this and sign it for me. You know it could be years of great friendship, but if something goes in a different direction other than success, the investor says, I'm not losing any money because my realtor signed my name. Do not ever sign any contract or addendum for your client. Don't do it, and don't ever be sloppy. Even if you're great friends, you can never trust that things will work out. Identify all contract deadlines and contingency dates. You always want to be one step ahead. We are always on the front lines. If something goes wrong, we are going to be the first to blame. The first thing you do when you have a sale contract is go through every single line and contingency dates. Write down the effective date of when the contract was executed and when it expires. When is the inspection period over? It is very important for you to never miss a deadline, especially a mortgage contingency or inspection deadline. With technology, you can do anything. Set alerts in your app files a couple days before every deadline, or simply use the old-fashioned technique of writing it on the board. Your job is to ring the bell every time you have a deadline approaching. If you represent the seller, never take a small deposit. Always think, what if? As a listing agent, you control the deal. I suggest 3 to 5% minimum. Sometimes it's risky. There are buyers that after 45 days don't care about losing $1,000 in the event that they find a better deal. That's an easy way for the buyer to walk out. You are setting yourself up for fraud if the buyer lies at the time of the application. This is critical. If you know anything about their jobs or income and do not go near it or acknowledge it, you will be okay. You do not want to be a part of mortgage fraud. You can screen the buyer by asking him or her questions, but you're setting yourself up for fraud if the buyer lies at the time of the application. If you don't know anything about the job income, don't get your hands into it. But you never fill out the application for them. Never estimate potential rent rates or the rate of investment. You cannot predict the future. Never order the inspection on behalf of the buyer. The buyer must order and pay directly. Never pay an unlicensed person a referral fee, and never accept compensation from anyone, and they must be from Exclusive Homes Company. All price adjustments and extensions must be in writing signed by all parties. Never do the final walkthrough. For example, your buyer had an inspection done, and you were doing the final walkthrough, so you were basically guaranteeing that all the work that has to be done on the home has been taken care of. This guarantee implies that everything is in order. Remember, you are not an electrician, a plumber, or a carpenter. The best thing to do after the repairs have been finalized is to hire an inspector to guarantee the completion of the home. Remember, you are not a decision maker of the property. You will be blamed if the repairs are not done properly. Make a video with the writing release. There are home warranties available on American Home Shield. Google it. Always have a paper trail and follow everything up with an email. Have everything in writing. Never comment on the condition of the home. Don't put yourself in a liability situation. Never say, wow, this home is in a great condition, because maybe the floor is beginning to crack and you can't see it. We can say it's a beautiful, immaculate home, but do not comment on the condition, especially when you have a listing. Never comment on the condition of the home. Never put utilities in your name. Never talk negatively about another agent or company. Verify all MLS square footage, year bill, etc. When writing an email or text, know that it will be read in court. Take lockboxes off after inspection and appraisal, and always verify public record ownership. All sellers must sign. Never give out a gate code, lockbox code, garage code, or your super key card. Last but not least, always request an escrow qualification. Even if you are a listing agent or a buyer representative, do not ever forget to verify the escrow. Thank you so much for your time today. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask your broker about anything that you have, any inquiries after this presentation. Thank you for your time.